Thanks for joining us today with the Athens-Clarke County Unified Government Mayor and Commission here taking up a budget work session. And right off the top, we got some updates from Mayor Gertz. Take it away, Mayor Gertz.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Edwards. I appreciate that. Just some programming notes. I think based on the wisdom of the group at our last budget work session, we certainly can and will go ahead and move the budget vote for finalizing the fiscal 2022 budget to Tuesday, June 15th. Again, that's Tuesday, June 15th, when we naturally will be meeting at 6 o'clock. That'll allow us to have a couple of weeks to digest some of the possibilities around American Rescue Plan funding and how that may overlay or dovetail with our general budget. And regarding American Rescue Plan funding, the Mayor and Commission is going to have a mini retreat and work session the afternoon of June 3rd. So that'll be between noon and 5 at Bishop Park. And at that meeting, we'll be talking about the American Rescue Plan and beginning to outline with everybody's input a trajectory for how we're going to determine use of those funds. We're going to talk about T-SPLOST, since the T-SPLOST referendum will be next year, 2022, and then we will talk about dispossessory prevention as well. So three things over the course of about 5 hours with lunch for commissioners. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem too. I think normally y'all take a vote when y'all been in executive session to go back into open session. Just a reminder. I don't know if
is there a motion to adjourn from executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Houle, a second from Commissioner Denson to adjourn from executive session. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, budget work session is yours. All right.
My computer is like going crazy right now. I'm going to try to keep it going. I don't know. It almost looks like somebody's hacked into it. There's a bunch
heavens. I can go ahead and kind of follow up on maybe some of the priorities that were identified last time, if that would be helpful.
I think I'm okay for now. I just have to like hold down the space bar the whole time. Okay. So anyway, yeah, so go ahead, Mayor Gertz. Sorry, this is crazy.
Okay, just to consolidate some of the thoughts from last time, and so I'll begin with that, and then have an opportunity for commissioners to follow up with any of the questions that they provided to staff and any more detailed explanation they may want from Manager Williams. I just want to sort of circle the wagons on a few things. So on the additional revenue side, there seemed to be interest in not funding civic dinners this year. So is that the will of the body?
I think we were pretty close to consensus on that one.
Okay, so let's go ahead and imagine that we're able to kind of put those dollars, around $24,000, back into play.
Question, Mayor Gertz. Would that actually be $42,000 because there's the money for GIO for those as well as the money for the inclusion office?
Manager Williams, I've got that as a $24,000 line item. I don't know if there were some other funds attached.
That's my understanding too, Mayor. 24,000.
So in our big binder on C72, it says there's 18,900 for civic dinners moved from the administration office to GIO, and then 24,000 for the inclusion office. So that would be 42,900 total, right?
I think Assistant Manager Edwards may have some insight on that.
Hey y'all, we did catch that with finance later. That was actually a typo in the budget book. It's not civic dinners. That was with the GIO. We're actually moving money from the manager's office budget to GIO to do similar things that we've done. It's related to community surveys and other items. So finance and I did catch that typo in the book, and they're not both civic dinners.
So it's just the 24. Is that correct? Okay. And similarly, interest in removing the Police Youth Cadet Corps at $184,000. There seemed to be a general consensus around that. All right. So that puts some money back into play. And then we can talk about prospective fund draws in just a couple of minutes. But just to run down a few things, there was interest in additional dollars for the public defender. So everybody solid with that. Okay. Interest in the 2 DA positions, the support position, and then the public outreach position, which currently is in effect, given kind of reallocation of one of the ADAs. So the 2 positions in the DA's office. Okay. And I think that's approximately $100,000. Interest in the expansion of the streetlight program at approximately $19,000. Okay. Interest in the quiet zone exploration at $6,000.
Can I ask a question about that?
Absolutely.
If the quiet zone, if we do the 6,000 for that, the other 200 plus is definitely not coming out of our budget, right? That's something that would then go to the T-Splost for consideration. Is that how we're imagining that happening?
I think that's the kind of vision thus far. Manager Williams, is that your recollection?
Yes, if you approve it, ultimately, yes.
As a T-Splost submission.
Exactly.
But we're only committing to 6,000. We're not committing to 6,000, and then in 6 months we'll get asked to commit another 200,000.
Yeah. Yes. It'll take some time for the that's my understanding, Commissioner Hull.
All right. And then there's interest in a bucket of funds for youth development. Seemed to be consensus around that. Interest in some level of funding for the homeless shelter. And certainly what I would recommend with that, and particularly given that on the 3rd, we're going to talk about homeless services broadly, is some definable outcome. And so given that the Athens area homeless shelter is family focused, what I would recommend you do is work with staff to describe what your deliverables are. So if you want 8 families kind of housed in family units with support services, to have that specified, rather than just to have sort of a unallocated dollars, but to determine what is it that you want to see coming out from that expenditure. And then the other thing was the pilot alternative crisis response from Advantage. And those last 3 certainly, and again, we're going to have to follow up on the 3rd, but those last 3 would be eligible for ARP funds. And Commissioner Parker.
Thank you. I appreciate that recap. I also did my own recap, got sort of a tally from the last meeting. And I think the living wages was also supported by 7 commissioners and was left out of that accounting that you just gave. So just wanted to add that. And also the Lindentown Walk of Recognition.
Thank you for mentioning the Lindentown Walk.
7 commissioners at the last meeting. And
so what we'll need is some scale around living wage. So we'll need to figure out how ramp-in looks, what the timeline would look like, and then what the dollar value would be for obviously not only moving the floor up, but the commensurate upward trajectory of those folks who are in that low to mid set of bandings. And so Manager Williams, I don't know if finance has that yet, or HR does, or if that's going to take some additional work.
Well, what staff had recommended, I understand the urgency to want to do this. We do have some funds that we could hire a consultant to make a recommendation on the best way to do this without creating compression, and get to where you want to go. If you just, and I don't want to, at the risk of repeating myself, if you just simply move those 50 positions or so up, then you're going to create some compression with the others. If you try and ripple it all the way through the pay classification system, it's going to be very expensive. Is there another way that we could do that? Right now, the positions of the 50 or so, I think there's 54, about half of them are above the living wage, the $15 an hour. So we're talking about 27 folks, which every one of those people are important. But I want to make sure that we don't, create some issues for the classification system either. So staff would say, we've got some funds. Let's spend the first few months of FY22 studying that, coming back to y'all with some recommendations, and you could decide where you wanted to go from there.
Cool. Sorry.
No, and just to kind of pursue that prospective timeline, Manager Williams, if you imagined allocating $30,000, is that something staff thinks they could do in the first half of the fiscal year for implementation, say December, January timeframe?
If we could have the study complete by that time period and back to y'all to talk, or are you saying a budget amendment mid-year?
Yes, budget amendment mid-year, or block allocation now based on kind of what's determined once that analysis is done.
Yeah, we would be, it might be a bit of an educated guess for us to do that now, but we would certainly commit to analyzing that and bringing it back to you with some numbers and suggested changes.
Follow up, Commissioner Parker?
Yeah, the last thing I would add, the last item that I counted as having support of 7 commissioners roughly was the disparity study for minority contracting. And I know that Manager Williams sent us some additional information on that. If we could, have a discussion around the pros and cons of moving ahead based on that, as well as some perspectives represented here, that'd be cool. But yeah, I just wanted to add that to the list of things that enjoyed broad support at our last meeting.
Great, thanks for that. And I think the Lindentown Walk was $50,000, just as a ballpark, with the expectation it's going to be somewhere in the 30 to 50 range. And Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. Two things I want to clarify about the living wage. One was, I'm pretty sure when we did that poll, Mayor Pro Tem Edwards had explicitly mentioned temporary and seasonal workers as part of that, and we got 8 people supporting it in that. And one of the two who I don't think indicated, but he was off camera, was Commissioner Hamby. I know he's not here to speak to it, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he is on the Lindentown committee, and they voted unanimously, including his vote, to support living wages, actually at a higher number. So I would think that explicit inclusion of temporary and seasonal is a part of what everyone consensus upon in the last meeting, if I understand it. And then, maybe we can talk about this a bit more here, but certainly the proposal I've been suggesting and advocating for is that we do fund that study to address wage compression as soon as we're able, but we do bring up everybody to 15 at the start of the fiscal year. So my understanding is that we were voting on that proposal in that straw poll, and we can talk about that, or maybe redo the straw poll here. But if that's how I understood that discussion on Thursday to have gone.
So let's break that into pieces. So, does everybody want to make sure that temporary and seasonal are included in that?
Can we see numbers? When Blaine sent out the email, I didn't see that. I'll feel more comfortable seeing numbers, but I'm comfortable with seasonal and temporary workers as well, but I would like a better understanding when I see numbers.
That 700 to 800 figure that we've been talking about has included that. That was in that initial staff report we got. So.
Okay, I think I'm back here. So, Commissioner Myers.
Excellent.
I'm going to have a hard time supporting having seasonal wage employees getting $15 an hour when I look at the numbers that we received today, considering our retirees. I was just in shock when I saw the increases that they have not gotten. And just to make sure this is clear to you all, I got them back from 1998. They had a $50 increase. 10 years later, they had another $50 increase. 2014, they had $50 increase. In 2018, they had $25 increase. That is just pitiful. If you think of someone working in solid waste or leisure services, any of our support staff, and they worked for 40 years from 22 to 62, they've been retired for 20 years, and they're trying to, that's the kind of, I was just shocked because as a state employee, I get a 3% cost of living, and this is just, there's no increase. So I'd have a really hard time supporting putting our seasonal workers at the camps when we haven't addressed our retirees at all. And clearly this is something that's, I haven't talked to Commissioner Thornton about it, but I did talk to Commissioner Davenport and Hamby, who worked on the Black Lives Matter resolution, and they believe it was probably Commissioner Thornton who got that in there as part of the Black Lives Movement resolution to address pay wages for our retirees and the lack of increases.
Well, and if I...
Yeah. I also wanted to say that Commissioner Hamby said he had gotten some other information to share with me.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, Manager Williams, go ahead.
Well, just so the defined benefit, plan was set up a long time ago, and it was not indexed for inflation. So it's not necessary. You can always, the pension committee can recommend increases, and y'all can accept those, but it won't happen automatically because that's not the way the pension plan. If that's something you're interested in, then that's, that will increase the unfunded liability. So there is that's how that works there. That the $50 too, I think, not that it's a great big difference, but I believe that's per month, not just not for the year.
So, I'm aware of that, but like I said, I think I get that probably more than that every 6 months. So
the state benefits are richer, that's for sure. I mean, they are. That's the term in the vernacular. Yeah.
Yeah, but I pay insurance.
Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, what else? What else should we be doing during this work session to help guide this budget document to its adoption?
So it seems like we've got some pretty good consensus around items that we've mentioned thus far, with some details left to be worked out. I mean, I question the wisdom of moving to a $15 floor without the commensurate modification through at least the low to median component of our workforce. And so I would just make a bid to make sure that while we do this quickly, we do it well, and we kind of work up the ladder. I've not seen numbers from today, and I'm sorry, I've just been covered up all day, and I know a couple of emails have come.
So we definitely have some consensus behind several proposals. How would you like to incorporate those in the budget document and circulate that back to the commission so we can kind of move the ball forward?
So what we know for sure is that, we've got a couple of additional, a couple $100,000 really. Another capital project, I'm looking at my notes, was removal of the leaf vacuum at $75,000. Everybody okay with that? So that puts some money back into play.
I am not. I think that moving to the electric leaf blowers is part of our renewable pledge, sustainability pledge, employee safety. I mean,
and I just want to separate two things. So the leaf blowers themselves are about $5,000, but then the vacuums are a separate line item at $75,000.
And Commissioner Edwards,
is it like a street sweeper vehicle type thing?
Well, we've talked about, and this is pertinent to the Riverbend corridor as well. This would help us get, leaves out of the streets and along the way. We can use them downtown, of course, but this, I think, would be in addition to the leaf blowers, not instead of.
Mr. Williams, don't we have money from the last budget to purchase this leaf machine that we've been
We
looking
do.
for? I know we were talking about maybe getting a tractor attachment too, but I mean, that money's there, right?
So we had budgeted for 2 of them at $40,000 last year. We need 2 of them.
Okay.
And the company went out of business. And
Yeah.
the closest thing that we can spec to what we wanted for the function is more along 75. So now we're to 1. And so I think they're asking for an additional one in this budget year.
Okay, so again, that this is part of, maintaining our city's infrastructure, keeping bike lanes clear. I mean, I think that this y'all remember this issue on Riverbend. The folks, down there were walking in a bike lane. This gentleman came out of the bike lane. Most folks in that area agree that it was because of all the litter and debris in the bike lane that drove people to walk in the street. And then this man was struck and killed. So, I mean, I support these machines because they're going to help clean our streets and maintain our infrastructure, keep them looking good, keep our bike lanes clear.
I mean, I'll testify that there is a need to keep bike lanes and roadsides clear. I mean, now that I ride a scooter, which is a little more treacherous than a bike when it comes to going over debris, I've noticed that.
So this is a capital expenditure that obviously would avail itself of use for multiple years. So everybody comfortable leaving both the electric blowers and the vacuums in?
What was the figure for that again? $75,000?
75 for the vacuums, and the blowers are basically $5,000.
Oh, it totaled 80.
Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Houle.
I mean, these things all make sense enough to me, but I just want to express that, we're talking about leaf collection materials, some street lights, and a railroad quiet zone for a very privileged part of town as higher priorities than paying people above a poverty wage who work for us to use those tools. I think we need to think very hard about the fact that we have job postings right now for $8.03 an hour for people who are working. And this excuse that they're all high school kids or something, maybe the only person who's going to apply for that job is a 14-year-old. But maybe if a 14-year-old needs to work that job, they also need money to help their family out. So we need to pay the people who work for this government enough to actually live on. And anything below $14.40 is not enough to live on, according to the metric that most of this body campaigned on.
Okay, good point. I mean, I do support the $15 an hour too. Let me just say, I mean, I think I'm less concerned about compression. I mean, especially we're talking about 27 some odd positions. And I'm going to get to Commissioner Parker and Davenport right away, but I just say for me, compression doesn't concern me much when we're talking about 27 positions. I mean, I know running our business at the store, we had some salary compression when we decided to bring our hires up to a living wage some years ago, but there was never, I don't know, there was never a problem. The ones who were there already, there was no resentment. So, I mean, I would like to learn more about salary compression and the sort of jealous resentment that I guess that might engender. But again, focusing on the fact that this is a living wage, we're trying to help people survive. I guess I just need more clarity on the scope of the problem with salary compression. Go ahead, Commissioner Parker.
Thank you. Yeah, I also, I guess, take issue with pitting, like, whether to prioritize our retirees or our current employees as it's either ors or reasons not to do one because there is an injustice in the other category. I would love to work with my colleagues to figure out a way to address both issues. But I think there's been a movement for to fight for 15 that going on for like a decade, that to the point that $15 an hour is almost inadequate at this point. And I think that that alongside, A couple of other priorities that people have identified that I'm glad enjoy broad support are all things that help, from the homeless shelter funding to the youth development to the living wages, all support safety in our community, the stability of our neighborhoods and our families. If people are making enough money where they're not resorting to theft, if people experiencing intimate partner violence have a shelter to go to and are not calling 911 because conflicts are escalating. All of these things are matters of keeping our community safer. And so if we want to look at how to address all these things, perhaps the issue of retirees and a fair increases in their benefits, is something that we do need to look at. We do need to talk about we do need to think about these things as the way that we can invest in them as ways of making our community stronger and thusly safer. And so I know that in previous conversations and in some of the follow-up documents that we've received, the revisitation of the out-of-county take-home program has come up a number of times. I think the chief provided some perspective on what value it brings to the organization. But again, when I talk to my constituents, they want officers that live in the county they serve. I spoke to an officer recently who said that when he's patrolling my district, he trusts the people he stops and talks to more than some officers that work outside of the county. And so when we look at reallocating potentially that roughly $80,000 we could save from modifying that program into the living wages, into the homeless shelter, into the advantage proposal, look at, perhaps this could be a way to support our retirees better. I think that's something we need to take a really good hard look at, and something that I hadn't heard come up in this conversation yet.
So for now, I would like us all just to go around once and sort of follow Commissioner Parker's lead and just sort of, give voice to your top priority that you'd like to go ahead and work to get in the budget. Go ahead, Commissioner Parker. Commissioner Davenport, then we'll go backwards from you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I support the police take-home program. It helps build morale. We voted on it 2 years ago. I think it's a great program. There's some fallacies with it, but back to the leaf vacuums. I'm not against the leaf vacuum because I think it's important, but I do have a question to Blaine. Doesn't Central Service already have a leaf vacuum? Or does Central Services already have a leaf vacuum?
Well, the leaf vacuum is a smaller, the one that we're talking about here is smaller. Public Works has a vacuum that goes and clears out the stormwater inlets. So you may see that where the leaves get washed into those, and they'll go and they'll spend the year going around and trying to get those back out of there so they don't clog the pipe. So you may have seen something like that acts like a vacuum, but the leaf vacuums are smaller and allow collection of leaves in strategic places.
Thank you. But
Okay.
back to Mayor Pro Tem's. So I 100% support the living wage. It's something that I campaigned on, and for me, it's personal because not only did we as a nonprofit create a living wage, we're showing people in Athens-Clarke County that a living wage, it actually benefits the people, bring them out of poverty. And I think Athens-Clarke County should set that example, to be the institutional leader in this area, to show people that, okay, we care and we value our employees. And the best way to do it is to at least do the threshold. And it looks like federal government may be moving, sometime soon on doing the federal minimum wage at 15, so we could be ahead of that game. But to me, we cannot talk about poverty when we pay even 27 employees below, $15 an hour. So just for me, I just think we have to realize the benefit that we can I think it's just the benefit of our community, as well as setting the standard for other institutions in Athens-Clarke County and the surrounding area. But just other budget priorities is still just come back to me.
Okay, sure.
Also, this is the third time we've done this exercise. Is there not a different way we could go about this discussion?
I'm open for suggestions. I just want
I'm
to make
not
sure everybody gets equal time.
Yeah, we have done, I think, maybe one straw poll and one other go around where people express their priorities. I wonder if there's a way for us to sort of engage each other around some that may, like perhaps the more robust discussion around some that may be contentious to work through and perhaps persuade our colleagues one way or another, because it does kind of feel like we're stuck with a lot of things we want to pay for.
Well, yeah, let's try to give everybody equal time first. You know,
Sure.
Use it how you want to use it. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Myers.
Great. Didn't know which way you were going around.
Yeah, coming to you.
Geographically. Okay, so just to clarify on the living wage, the only issue I had was really going all out with the seasonal workers. I'm not against a gradual increase. I don't know. I'm just saying that in that one area that I'm not sure if going from, I don't know the number of seasonal employees, but anyway, from someone who worked summers, and I know a lot of people do for different reasons, it's maybe going from an 18 to 15 could be more gradual for the seasonal workers, considering that we haven't, touched and thought about our senior population. If we can do them all, that's great too. In terms of, I do have one thing I want to push for still, and I had a very fruitful discussion with some of my fellow commissioners earlier this morning on the upping the base salary for the energy coordinator position. And I will give you the solution first, and then back up with the points, the supporting points here. But basically, it was pointed out to me that one of the big things that this person's going to be involved with is the $16 million, almost $16 million in SPLOST projects, and that we could take a portion, or perhaps that 15,000 from the SPLOST management funds to use for that person. I think that was especially persuasive to me, because what we're doing with the energy is we're getting a return on investment, and as we're able to spend this, we cut down our operating expenses. We have not spent 1 million. We had 1 million we put in a bucket in 2011. It is not all spent 10 years later. We are putting 16 million in a budget. In addition, I just want to point out that this is a person, and I'm going to speak passionately on this. I mean, climate change is happening. It's coming right now, and the economy is changing. This person is going to be the point person in Clarke County for helping us in a matter of 29 years now to transition the whole community and the government to renewable energy from the diesel economy. Okay, and this person's going to have the technical knowledge to do that. This person's going to be able to speak to the Georgia Power and the hospitals, as well as to homeowners and people living in affordable housing, and be able to speak across and confidently through our whole government. And I think there's I looked at just got the job description today, but I think it's urgent upon us. There is no one who's going to take charge of this right now. It's all going to be split up into different areas. And that person has a big, gigantic responsibility. Talk to someone in industry, describe the job to this person, and said, what would you think you need to get? This is a person who is a leader, an executive leader in one of our major industries, who I know casually. And he said, I think for that position, you need 125 to 150. So, and if someone didn't have any proven experience, maybe down to 100. So what I'm asking is to get that salary from 55 to be able to move it up 15,000 so that we can get this leader to transform this whole economy. And there's a return on investment here again with other things. So there's my 3 minutes all in there. I do want to ask, the other thing I wanted to ask that came up today was that we've had recent SPLOST infrastructure expenses, and I'm not sure that we've included operating expenses in here for those SPLOST projects. And I just wanted to address that and see if perhaps Manager Williams could find out in terms of our opening and trails and other projects in the last year. Have we budgeted for the operating expenses to take care of those projects? Anyway, that's something
Okay.
we haven't discussed, and so I wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
And
So what was your question specifically for Manager Williams?
well, the one for him was that someone brought up to my attention that we have been adding a lot of like trails and leisure services projects that have come in, from the bathrooms at Ben Burton to what's coming on, more trails, and we haven't upped the operating expenses. And I know when we put we accept and vote on these projects, there are operating expenses in there, and it seems like we need to follow through and make sure that we have the operating expenses to keep these things up.
Okay.
And address that.
Manager Williams, could you let us know, if leisure services, I assume they made a budget request.
They did, and if I might, as you know, I handed some budget recommendations in the form of big rocks, and so there were a lot of things, requests that really need to be funded that, I was very Spartan in my recommendations. In fact, I offered a suggestion for a potential tax increase for revenue to offset, so that we can have a fiscally sustainable budget. And that was a point I did want to make. So we have held back on a lot of things that we need, trying to hold the line. You could argue there's a lot of worthy projects out there that didn't get recommended. And then we get to this portion of it, and of course, and it is your prerogative to add new things. I would say that as part of this, to Commissioner Parker's question about how do we proceed forward, or what could we do differently, I think adding in how are we going to pay for the additions, because I think you would want that balanced budget, walking out of here. And right now, our calculations, you've gone through some of these and whittled it down. It was good coming into this meeting. You got about $3 million worth of additions. And the mayor and I have talked about what can be deflected to the American Rescue Act. But I think the bottom line in getting through these budget deliberations and getting to the vote is how to balance the general fund budget. That's the point, I think, of what we're doing. And, we've pretty much, with the mayor's recommendation, we've used all the available fund balance down to the minimum recommended 2 months. And so anything that we're talking about now, beyond the cutting of the cadet corps and the civic dinners, where will that revenue come from? Will you cut something else? I would not recommend, we haven't even realized, we think we're going to realize a surplus from this current fiscal year, but we don't know that yet. And certainly the way that we're helping to pay for this year's capital is from a little bit of last year's surplus. So if you start to chew into that, then you've got an even bigger hill to climb next year. And so my point here, y'all, is that just with thinking, some governments budget 2 years, so that they can think in advance and what will the next step be. So Commissioner Myers, there are things out there we've held back on that are worthy of funding, but we're trying to plan ahead, just in case the economy may not be good next year. And how do we continue to fund these new things? Thank you.
Great. And I think we need to wrap up this meeting at 7, to avoid we've had a long couple days on the commission dealing with some difficult topics. So I'll say for my portion, I do support continuing to figure out how we can get up to $15 for all of our employees. So now we've got Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'll start by saying that I do support paying that energy program and conservation coordinator position a better salary. I think it'll pay for itself in terms of cost savings, as well as the obvious kind of ethical and future generations based benefits that Commissioner Myers pointed out. And yeah, I'll just reiterate the 15 an hour. And it's not just for the part-time and full-time, but also for seasonal and temporary. I mean, it sounds to me like there is a consensus here on 15 for part-time and full-time. So it sounds like bare minimum, we need to be moving forward with that. But I would just remind this body that it was a few years ago when some of us were on the other side of the rail arguing for living wages, that part-timers were regarded as the second-class workers. And then there's this whole study done, and they'd begun to get paid what at that time was a living wage, which is at this point now not caught up with inflation. And so now, if we're just going to treat seasonal and temporary employees like we used to treat part-time employees, we're just finding new ways to designate second-class employment. The fact is, if you're working for a wage, and we all believe that there's a minimum wage that someone can live on, then whether you're cobbling together a living with seasonal jobs until you can get that full-time position, or multiple part-time jobs that include some seasonal work when you can get it, or you are lucky to have that part-time or full-time position, it doesn't matter. The wage is a wage. And so if the wage is $15 an hour, then the wage should be $15 an hour no matter what the position is. So with that, I guess I'll pass it along to the next person.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Denson. Maybe we'll end sooner than 7. Go ahead, Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I definitely am excited about a lot of the things we have included on here. The alternative crisis response, homeless shelter funding, moving that stuff forward. But I just have to agree with the living wages. That just that ties into to so many of these things we're talking about, helping people having mental health crises or experiencing homelessness, going before the public defender, having to use the services of the public defender. So many of these things are because of the extreme income inequality that our community and every community across the United States experiences. At some point, you just got to go right at the problem, right, as correctly as we possibly can with our own powers, which is to pay our own employees. And I'm saying this definitely empathetic to the difficulties that this brings up for our staff, finance, and for our budget to even deal with this. And that a lot of this is tied to policies that existed long before any of us were working here. And also, of course, it does also speak to like the great attempts at trying to find some economic equality with our staff and past commissions doing things. But this is what we just have to do. This $15 isn't even going to be the thing that we shoot for in a couple of years. That's going to be a lower target, as we've already seen happens. And so I agree. We just need to go ahead and do $15. What I would suggest is we go ahead and do $15 immediately, starting FY22 budget, and that we plan for having a wage compression system of raises come into place in the third quarter, January 1st, so we can do either through a budget amendment or putting a chunk of funding aside, because and also doing the study, right, to find out how to do that. But this is the thing, and I was thinking about this as we were all talking. The study isn't to find out if we should pay people $15 an hour. The study is for us to think about how we're going to deal with the wage compression that happens because we're paying people $15 an hour. So putting off paying people $15 an hour is kind of arbitrary, because we're kind of saying we're going to do that. We're just delaying it. I don't understand why. So I think we should do the study, but the study should be how we deal with the wage compression. And then we should have a date put in place, which I recommend is the third quarter, for when the wage compression fixes go into place. But I think we're all in agreement here that we want to pay everybody at least $15 an hour. So we should just go ahead and budget for it, because we're all in agreement here. That's what we want to do, or at least the vast majority of us are. And we're also saying, all agreeing, it sounds like even staff agreeing that we're going to do that eventually. Let's go ahead and do it. So with that, I also definitely understand the concern about revenues. One thing I'd recommend, which has probably already come up, the health clinic feasibility study, which is a one-time cost, moving that over to American Rescue Funds, looking for any of those other one-time costs, kind of study kind of things that we can move over that won't be repeating, will be fantastic. And but again, I understand we're in a pinch, this money. I agree with Commissioner Edwards' passion on leaf debris and how terrible leaf blowers are. The leaf vacuum, since we have funding for one of them already, does sound like we can maybe put off funding the second one just to save us an extra $75,000 or $70,000, however much that is. And then I maybe let's looking at where we're also putting some large funds of money. Maybe talking about in the DA's office funding one of those positions, just because it's $100,000. We're doing both, and if we're doing the full thing, it's $170,000. We're getting to a point, y'all, where we're gonna have to really make some tough choices here. And then, also just the last thing I want to say is I'm completely supporting of the youth development funding and also the homeless shelter funding, obviously, but we're talking about those without a hard number associated with them. So I would like us to have a little bit of discussion to find out what that hard number is we're talking about there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. I'd be fine surrendering a leaf vacuum. I mean, as I think more about it, if we buy one, make sure that one works good, see how it goes, then maybe we buy another. I mean, I'm fine with that. Commissioner Wright is not here. Commissioner Link, and then we'll go to Commissioner Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, the leaf vacuum thing, I feel like that's certainly something that could be postponed. And also, there might be T-SPLOS funds out there for which it might qualify. I'm wondering. But I'm regarding this discussion about a living wage. When we passed our commitment to a living wage in the local government, it was only maybe 5-6 years ago. A living wage was somewhere in the range of $11 an hour, and it's certainly increased to very close to $15 an hour. And it hasn't increased because, the cost of a latte has gone up, or, the cost of groceries has gone up, or even the cost of, energy has gone up. It's increased because the cost of housing has gone up. Rents have gone through the roof. I don't have the figures at the top of my tongue. I believe Commissioner Hull mentioned it the other day. Property values have gone up. We see that from the revenues that have come in. But a big reason that these have gone up is because there are certain entities that are making massive profits from them, and those entities are related to the student housing market. I'd like us to have a serious discussion in the coming year about how we can garner more revenue from that market, whether it's a new look at our building fees, a per bedroom type fee, to ensure that the citizens to give us more revenue so that we can relieve the burden from the everyday working folks who are trying to just live in our community. I think we really need to look at the source of this whole issue that we're talking about. And, the major cost increase is housing costs increase. And, maybe we do need to have a sit down around the table with the University of Georgia and, folks from the real estate and development communities, and come up with a way where we can assure that this community is livable for the people who actually work here and want to raise their families here. As far as some of the new positions we're creating, I do wonder if we can save a little bit if we make those half-year or 3/4-year positions, and we can find the extra money that we need to pay for some of these initiatives. And I also wonder if ARP money could be used to fund COVID bonuses that will bring some of these positions up to a living wage for this coming year, and while we have this compression study and commit to making it an actual salary increase in the coming year. So I'm wondering if that's a way we can get folks the money that they most certainly need to live a decent life in our community.
Thanks, Commissioner Ling. Commissioner Thornton.
Sorry, I'm late. I'm just going to reiterate the cameras on the Smoky Road area. I think that's the least we can do. The North Athens area has not benefited from SPLOS in the past or the general budget. We have a rural area that has been ignored. I think that the safety issue and the dumping in those areas are more important than the leaf blower item, but hopefully we could do both. I would not like to have to make a choice between one or the other, but when we're talking about public safety, environmental issues, and the concerns of a group of people that have been out of or not connected, definitely that's priority for me. With the youth programs, I know there are groups and organizations working as we speak about youth programs in relationship to the gang activities and the shootings. I would like to see the youth programs be a collaborative effort that could come out of the American Rescue Plan and not extend a burden on our general budget. I definitely do not think this is the time to look at training or spending $500,000+ for training of nonprofits. At this time, we are really in an emergency situation. Yes, we have the American Rescue Plan money coming this way, but it doesn't mean that we should not be physically more responsible to the emergency needs. I know it's too late to really talk about anti-gang prevention, but it really needs to be in somebody's plan. And that's why I think the youth development work should look at the American Rescue Plan. I'm glad we are talking about livable wages. I am 100% supportive of the livable wage. This is something I've been involved in since Ray McNair days, so I definitely support that. And I guess the last thing for me is our membership. We brought that once, but I didn't follow up with the National League of Cities. I think Mayor Gertz, you were going to send us some information out so people would, I don't know, maybe it came out. I already had my
It's about $9,500.
Yeah, and all the details and that and benefits, I think would be helpful. So that's not no big chunk of money, but livable wage, the cameras in my area, and not just using that $500,000 plus for something else. No community civic dialogue conversations, and I'll hang in there with the leaf blowers if I don't have to pick it over my cameras.
All right. So everybody's been around, kind of wondering, what our next steps should be, Mr. Mayor, for us to see any sort of renewed proposal on your budget, or if you want to incorporate some of these consensus items and get back to us for, how much wiggle room we have to add on more programs. How do you want to move forward with this?
I think there are a couple of key pieces that we could look at particularly next week, given we're going to have the first conversation about American Rescue Plan dollars. And so a couple of people have identified that there are some things in the FY22 general fund budget that, certainly based upon the Treasury guidance, would be allowable through ARP. And remember that we can spend those dollars for 3 years. So, we can do more than just kickstart. We really can look at a sequence of funding. So I'd recommend that. And then really, it's my belief that if we would fund some things through ARP, then we're very close to having a balanced budget, with potentially just drawing a little bit more revenue replacement from ARP than the approximately $700,000 that were in the draft budget that I presented to you. And so I think following the meeting on the 3rd, we can determine if the body wants to commit to some of the things that are currently embedded in our list, moving on to the ARP docket for the next 3 years. And then by the time we get to the 15th, I think we'll be well coordinated. And certainly on the wage scale, I think as long as we commit to looking at everybody from, current 15 up to midpoint of the pay scale this year with that analysis that's been referenced, I'm happy with that. So appreciate everybody being willing to pursue that goal.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap up.
My second speaking.
Yeah, I see Commissioner Parker. Commissioner Parker, then Commissioner Hull. Go ahead.
Second. Thank you. So I wanted to, piggybacking off some of what Commissioner Thornton said with regards to youth development, I actually wanted to ask a question of Leisure Services staff, if we could get follow-up by our next meeting or via email, because actually we did acknowledge youth development as public safety as part of our discussions last summer and allocated $400,000 towards the Building Youth Opportunities program. And when I was looking at I looked at the FY21 budget as well as the drafts that were sent around regarding how those dollars should be programmed. And I would like a follow-up on how that programming went. I do think with what Commissioner Thornton and I have been talking about with regards to a collaborative process of figuring out how this new infusion of funds is spent is a key difference between that program last year and perhaps what we like to do moving forward, since we're getting a lot of feedback from people in the community who want to engage, who want to participate in figuring out how best to support the young people in our communities, and that might not have been the process we previously engaged in with that allocation last year. But I just wanted to follow up on how that went so that we can think around modifications with this second round of funding accordingly.
I think that's a good. I think that may be more work. That may be more work, but I think it's necessary because the conversations are in the community.
Manager Williams, did you get sufficient?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I
appreciate that. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Commissioner Hull, then Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, I'm really encouraged by where this is going. I appreciate your remarks as well, Mayor Gertz. One thing I wanted to clarify, were you saying then 15 for all employees, regardless of classification, as the floor to start at, and then we'll move forward with the study that I think we also all support?
I'm similarly situated as Commissioner Myers around some maybe fine tooth analysis of things like camp counselor positions. But by and large, any of the, temporary actual positions, I would want to see moved up to 15. And again, just glad that we're going to do the analysis so that whether it's implemented third quarter of this year or sometime in the new calendar year 22, that we would have those folks making 15 and 16, 25 and 17 similarly slotted in appropriately.
Okay.
Great.
Sorry. Yeah, I had a couple other thoughts on where we could pull money from, but I also just wanted to emphasize, we have the 2% merit-based raises that, after talking it over more with Manager Williams and staff, I know we've kind of pulled that off the table as a thing to look at and flatten out. And that's another thing I think we can point to when we're talking about wage compression is like folks who have been working really hard are going to be getting a raise at the start of this fiscal year. So it's not like they're all going to be staying at the exact same amount for the folks who are making 15 or more. And then we also have the hazard pay option in the rescue plan, which I know we'll get to talk about later. That can help as well with those folks who've already been working for us for a long time. I did want to clarify, so the fund balance, it looked to me like there was maybe $130K difference between what's currently in the mayor's budget and what would bring us all the way down to that exact line. So if that's true, that might just be a little bit of wiggle room for us. I'm basing that on the numbers in like the letter early on, and then that's so on like E7 and A3 if we're looking in your binder, kind of comparing those two figures. It also looks to me like the roughly 400,000 for police vehicles. If we're going to move some of that out, if we revisit the police vehicle take-home program for out of county, that would enable us to maybe free up some of the money in the capital projects. So there's like an ACCPD motorcycles and the corresponder team vehicle. So maybe we could use that money to pay for those vehicles to free up a bit of capital that way. And then also for the Advantage proposal, I was just in that board meeting earlier today, and realistically, those positions and crews probably don't get off the ground for about 3 months with all the hiring and everything. So that would reduce that overall figure by a bit for us as well, down to about 276,750. So that's just cutting it by a flat 25%, which their executive director, Ms. Conlon, said would probably make sense as an accurate figure for year one to save us a bit of money that way.
Commissioner Ho, could you please summarize this work you've done and just be sure to get it to us in writing?
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's good stuff. Commissioner Myers.
Heck yeah.
I just wanted to point out a few places that Manager Williams pointed out in the document that he sent us today on page 20, a couple of places where we could shift some smaller amounts to SPLOST programs from the community garden, if that would be, I don't even know if that's when we get to that, could come out of sustainability. There might be some items in the fire department list of expenses that could go from the SPLOST program, as well as the pavement and the bridges. And I'm wondering if Manager Williams could put forth some suggestions there to see how much that might add up to 100,000 right there. And could we explore that as a way to sort of free up 100,000? I mean, the numbers are in the document, like I said, page 20. I also want to see if I do have any support for me pursuing with Manager Williams the possibility of using some of the SPLOST management fees for the to bump the sustainability energy person who will be dealing with that large SPLOST pool of money as a way to get a better starting salary and hopefully a better candidate pool in here for this major project that we're doing.
Manager Williams, can you look into that using SPLOST management to bump the sustainability officer?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then we can straw poll that one. I mean, I'm supportive of it. Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just two quick things. One, I forgot to point this out when I spoke earlier. I know I brought this up a little bit, but the Inclusionary Housing Initiative Committee is also asking for, on top of the $120,000 that will go towards housing and oversight of our temporary program we'll have in place over the next year. We're also asking for $35,000 to go towards a missing middle housing zone scan. This is a bit of a cutting edge kind of thing that's communities have done. Greenville just did a very thorough one. I'll be sending a memo out to y'all as soon as this meeting's over, showing you more about it. That specifically identifies hurdles that we have in our own zoning and policy and also urban planning that is hindering the creation of missing middle housing. So that would bring the mayor recommended $120,000. So that would bring that ask for that initiative up to $155,000. And my last thing is just asking Commissioner Myers, because I think this just really kind of puts it maybe in everybody's mind the need to have that sustainability coordinator position increased. I believe if I'm correct here, like the hourly pay of that position right now, as it's funded, is like less than $16 an hour.
No, it's more. There was a problem with in one of the original documents we got, but it is about $26 an hour, and that's what it figures out to. It's $55,000.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that.
Great. Okay, Commissioner Thornton.
I am assuming that we are trying to cut expenses, and we are looking at, and maybe this will come out when we start talking about the American Rescue Plan funds. But I just want to go on the record that we are in emergency situation with the new violence that is popping up, and we still have not, as a group, as a committee, talked about the homeless encampments and the deadline that is looming over us. So I don't want to ignore that. I'm getting calls on both issues, but I know the way this budget has already, gone down the track, it's probably too late to address that. But I'm a firm believer when you have an emergency, sometimes you got to be flexible to deal with that emergency. But I have no plan. I have no suggestion. But I do want to say those are two issues that are really hurting the low income communities and communities of color. So I just want to put that out there.
And Commissioner, just before you jumped on, we're looking at the agenda for next Thursday afternoon's mini retreat, and the homeless continuum is one of the three things we're going to be talking about in that lengthy meeting. And then the day before, we're having that roundtable discussion with providers.
Thank you.
I have
Hold on. So final thoughts from folks, and we're going to adjourn. Go ahead, Commissioner Parker. Then Commissioner Link. You're muted.
Okay, thank you. I just want to chime in as another member of the Inclusionary Zoning Working Group about the value of that missing middle code scan. I know that we're pretty deeply entrenched in certain budget priorities we've been talking about for weeks now, so it might be hard to justify adding a new thing on, but especially given that we've had some debates among this body about the value of investment in that missing middle, though we do have demonstrable evidence from, the GIC study and others that is a missing housing segment that would definitely help with compression in our housing market in Athens. It's hard to say prioritizing housing for middle income people, why? But to understand that a lot of these zoning codes that prevent the development of duplexes, triplexes, of some of the housing that is barred in a lot of our single family neighborhoods is often also racially motivated. The idea that with increased density with multifamily units, you get lower income people, and that is a reason why our zoning codes may be the way they are. As a matter of racial equity, it is a very, very important scan for us to do. So I know it's difficult with a very tight budget already to consider the addition of other things. But as a matter, I know equity has come up a great deal in this body. I just wanted to lend some perspective on how this study would be valuable towards those ends of ending some of the outdated policies in our neighborhoods that may have come from a racially motivated place, so that we can ensure integrated neighborhoods and folks being able to afford housing in general. So yeah, just wanted to chime in with that.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I have a big question about this Thursday, June the 3rd retreat and the Homeless Roundtable. We got an email on Friday the 21st, just this past Friday, 4 days ago, that our long-awaited Homelessness Roundtable would be on the previous day, Wednesday, June 2nd at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's what I have on my calendar. That's what I've made arrangements to attend. I'm unable to attend anything on the afternoon of June the 3rd.
Okay, is the one on the 2nd still happening, Mayor Gertz? Okay, great. Yep, still on the calendar.
That's still on the calendar. So then there's a second thing on the
doubled up.
Okay. So the one on the 2nd is the one with the actual providers.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Okay, good. That's what I'm extremely interested in. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. I think we've given the mayor and staff some good direction to move forward towards incorporating some of our proposals in the next iteration of the budget. I encourage you all to pick up the phone, make those phone calls, build support for your ideas as we move forward towards budget adoption. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.